This program is brought to you by the Media Liberty Alliance Foundation in cooperation with OBBM Network TV, bringing citizen-led, creative local media to the forefront of local communities to foster a greater understanding of constitutional liberty and appreciation of what makes us truly free, starting with you and me.
Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That way you're updated each time fresh content comes out. And thank you for being part of the Zach Rateliff Show.
The Zach Rateliff Show is sponsored by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Exceed Health Clinic, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org. Welcome to the Zach Rateliff Show. I'm Zach. It's my buddy Joe. What's up, Joe?
What's going on?
Man, good to have you here again, dude.
Yeah, dude. It's going to be fun today.
We always have some good conversations, and I think knowing and learning is not a problem. It's never a problem. I always have people ask, like, well, why? I'm like, hey, there's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Right.
And so that's why I appreciate that you continue to want to do this, and
Yeah.
and I'm just open for it. Let's talk about whatever you're getting into, and we've come a long way as we're coming through these things.
Yeah. Someone can go back and watch all the stuff we've done. So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of it at this point.
Yeah, dude. I just want to say thank you again. Appreciate you letting me come on the show consistently, and
Oh, no
you know,
doubt.
and I actually have something to promote today, so that's cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Jump us off. You have somewhere you want to go. I'm just following along today.
Yeah, man. So I have been, since I started podcasting, it's been over 2 years now, and I've been really consistent. But I've been searching for, what the show should actually be.
Right.
And it went from like trying to do comedy
Right.
to interviewing anybody that is willing to be interviewed.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then,
And it turns out a lot of people are willing to be interviewed.
oh yeah, I did hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And then and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, man, I'm just not like niche down enough. Like I don't
Right.
have my own lane, or like
Yeah.
these shows I cut on. I like to learn. So like if I go to a podcast or a show, a lot of times it's because I want to learn.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm getting into with these shows that I'm watching. I know, okay, this is what this show is. This is what I'm going to get.
Right.
And I'm like, well, damn, that's what I'm missing more than anything.
Yeah.
Is like people knowing what they're going to get when they listen to me.
Right.
And with my just fascination of the Bible recently, especially the New Testament, I just spend so much time on it.
Would you say? Let me ask you this. Would you say it's a new fascination with the Bible or a rekindled fascination?
Rekindled, for sure.
Probably in a different way, maybe.
Right.
But definitely, it's been there before, and then kind of.
Right. Yeah, I would say when I was 17, when I had what I felt like was like a conversion experience, and at that time, I would have fought you over like whether I was a Christian or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
And no, dude, I toted the Bible around with me everywhere.
Yeah.
And I had more of like I could tell you a bunch of stuff about the Bible at that point, but it was more like devotional. I would think to myself, I would say, like every time I open the Bible, I'd be like, all right, what does this mean for my life today?
Right.
You know what I mean? And now
Which is not always bad.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
But now I kind of approach it more from like what, like if I think about like the writer of Mark, like what is he saying? Like
Yeah. What's he trying to tell everybody?
Right.
What's the story he's trying
And
to
so that's kind of the idea behind the show. So I am starting a new show. This is March 2nd today. Probably won't be out till March 3rd, right?
Okay.
This your show, right?
I'm going to try to put it out today.
Oh, it'll be out today. Okay, so tomorrow
Yeah.
I'm releasing my show with 3 episodes right off the gate, and then I'll be releasing every Tuesday. And Thursdays will be a different type of episode, and not all Thursdays, but
Right.
most Thursdays.
Okay.
And so it's called the Agnostic Bible Study, which scares some people because of the name.
Well, and let's just, even as I don't know, it took me a while to understand what agnostic meant.
Right.
Just in general, I don't think everybody does, because I certainly didn't for a long time. So kind of give us the breakdown of just the term agnostic, or I can look it up if somebody wants the actual definition.
No, I'll give it to you the way I understand it, in the way that kind of resonates with me.
Because I think that's important, right?
Yeah. It's like I'm not sure that we can know. And when it comes to these big things about the universe and creators and whether there is one or not, or even the different religions, or however you want to define what you find in the Bible or other ancient texts or things like that, it's hard to know. When I think that you've heard it said, like, some of the smartest people are the ones that just acknowledge that they don't know.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me. It's like, how can I, in a way, I have trouble sitting here thinking like I've figured out the mysteries of the universe.
Right, because a lot of people tried for a whole long time, right?
Yeah. And you'll meet people, and it's like nothing against them, but like they feel like they understand the mysteries of the universe, and that's fine. Like, it's cool to get there. I think it does take faith, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it takes faith on both sides.
To be an atheist takes a lot of faith too. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So, I'm not an atheist, right? I think I'm not sure, right? I
think that's valid.
Right, and that's
that's probably the most genuine center of the, hey, I'm just trying to figure this out point of view, which is agnostic, right? I mean, that just trying to
pull up the definition, see what
that's what I'm working on. Of course, you know how the internet
okay.
goes.
It's loading. Yeah, be interesting. Yeah, because and that's the kind of approach I want to bring. I bring to the Bible, because here's what's happening on the internet, and this is for sure. Okay. You've got your Christian pages, and then you've got your atheist pages when it comes to talking about the Bible. And the Christians are on defense mode, and the atheists a lot of time are on attack mode, and vice versa. You know, where everyone's just attacking. And I say, well, just like in government, where you really need checks and balances.
Yeah, for sure.
You need, just like if there was just two branches of government, you have to have the third branch in theory to be like a balance. And I feel like studying the Bible from the middle ground is an interesting perspective, because it's almost kind of like the libertarian thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if I get too team Republican, I can lose sight of what's supposed to be happening. If I get team
Democrat, get me on my soapbox, because that's where I'm at.
Right, and if I get too team Democrat, then I might lose sight of what we're actually after, which is the country doing better.
Right.
So that's the same type of approach I'm trying to bring to the Bible, where it's okay, I think that Christians can get so defensive of it that they might miss things that stick out, or they might, you know what I'm saying?
I agree.
And I think people that are done with religion, I think they can do the exact same thing from the other side. So that's what my goal is.
Okay. So here's the 3 different definitions of it. Agnostic, one who believes that it's impossible to know whether there is a God. Number 2 is one who is skeptical about the existence of God, but does not profess true atheism. Or number 3, one who is doubtful or non-committal about something. So that's just in general, because I'll often say I'm agnostic of,
right,
and just because I don't know, but I think that's kind of where you're coming from on this, is you don't know, but you're open to questioning,
right?
And the Bible says, "Test me on these things." So God's like, ask these questions, and so as you know, I'm a professed Christian. But I don't think that makes me perfect. And I think you know that about me too, is I mess up every day. I'll say something stupid during this interview probably. But okay, let's figure it out, because here's always my view. Anybody that, there are a lot of preachers I trust and all that, but the ones I really trust are the ones that say, I don't know, what does the book say? I don't know, have you prayed about it? I don't know. Then, kind of like what you said earlier, the smartest person in the room is the one to tell you that. Because anybody that tells you, I know this word for it, I know exactly what it means, I'm like, whoop.
Yeah, easy.
I'm out on anything you have to say, probably.
Yeah, it's tough though. But you bring so the concept of bringing that to the Bible. It's any time. So my show, one thing I do, and this is a verse by verse reading of.
So in your Agnostic Bible Study.
Yeah, verse by verse, and I'm starting with the book of Mark.
Okay, because that's a fun one.
We're going to read every single verse, and I'm in no hurry. Ooh. I've shot the first 8 episodes, and we are in verse. I think I'm about to get to where Jesus gets baptized in Mark 1, and if you know where that's at, I'm somewhere around verse 12.
Okay.
After 8 episodes, so I'm not in any hurry at all. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna read, we're gonna discuss everyone. But the agnostic part about it is that I'm not going to just accept everything's right just off the jump. And I'm also not just trying to sit down and say, okay, how do we destroy this? You know?
Right. You're not trying to necessarily bust holes in it, but you're just saying, hey, why is this the way it is?
Yeah, and my rule for my show is every time I read a passage and I have any type of question, we bring up the question. Okay. And now I can't solve these questions. And a lot of times in this, I don't solve the question.
Right.
All I can do is just say, hey, when I read this verse, it made me think, huh? What?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Here are all the things I thought.
And so that's my rule. Every time I have a question, I feel obligated to ask that question on the show. So whether it leans one way or leans the other way, just by default, it doesn't matter. If I think that question when I read the Bible, I say, okay, that has to be at least explored.
Are you recording me right now?
No.
I was gonna think that was awesome. I'm like, we're gonna do a little cross.
No, I have to hit the button or tell it to. It'll be flashing. I got my meta glasses on.
Yeah. No, I was like, I wonder if he's recording. Anyway, sorry. Side note. Like, this is awesome. I wasn't upset about it. I was just like, I forgot about that. God, I completely derailed myself. I forgot what my question was.
Oh no, we're talking about questions. Every time I see a question in the Bible, I ask it.
Oh yeah,
for the show.
Every time you see a question that you ask it, okay. And here was my thought is, if you believe these things, like me,
right,
I shouldn't be upset with you asking questions, because maybe I need to hear those questions too. Maybe it's something I haven't thought of. But we've been through this a lot of times. I know where my faith is, and so I'm okay with the questions. Because right, I believe throughout the text it will bear it out. But okay, maybe this is good. It's good to know. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. And so, because I've had people like, well, what, this guy doesn't believe, or or whatever.
Yeah, you ever get any backlash for having me on the show?
I wouldn't call it backlash. I have a lot of people going. The most I have people going, hey, I appreciate you having that guy on. These are some decent questions.
Cool.
And so, no, I hadn't had anybody been like, firing pitchforks or anything. Yeah, what are you doing? Because I think, and this is just a little Rateliffology, I think if you bring in the questions from a genuine place, which I believe you are,
right,
I don't think it doesn't hurt my faith principle. And if anything, it makes me dig and say, why do I believe this? Why is it? And then I'll go read, and then so far I'm just like, yeah. But obviously, too, I've said a couple times that I have no doubt. So why would I? If you're afraid of questions in anything in life, there's a problem in your belief system, I think.
Right, yeah.
You should be able to welcome the question.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been in Mark, dude. And, dude, Mark's so cool. Man, I about worn out Mark, and this is a brand new Bible. There's just so much cool stuff in there, dude. And so what I'll do is, a lot of times is, when we go to Mark, so like I'll read, like the structure of most episodes is, but since Mark is in so much of Matthew and Luke, and right, I've said this before on here, but they're the synoptic gospels.
Right.
You got Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they are very, very close to with the wording, the structure, the stories. They make changes, they make edits and stuff like that, but it is. And so what I typically do is I'll pick a section of verses, probably not very many.
Right.
'Cause my first episode that we actually broke down the scriptures, I did, verse 1 through 3, and that was it.
And everybody, just so you know, I brought my big book. I've got this one over here, and but this is the one with all my notes. Well, let me read verses 1 through 3. Do you care?
Yeah, that's cool. We can talk about it.
So Mark chapter 1, verse 1, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, make ready the way of the Lord, make his path straight. Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting there that they say, I got to find the right deal for this episode 3. I got all my episodes into my notes here.
The first thing that I notice, of course, then it's very much the next thing is this is Isaiah preparing, talking about, then it throws back to John the Baptist, the voice in the wilderness, and so,
right? Yeah,
and so that's kind of at the end of that. But anyway, what?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things there. So like something interesting there is if we look at the first deal, it says the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ. So think about that, the beginning according to Mark.
Right.
That's his starting point. His starting point starts with John the Baptist.
Right.
And so he doesn't start with the virgin birth or any kid stories of Jesus
or getting lost left at the temple.
All that stuff. When Mark, and you know how I think Mark wrote first. I believe Mark wrote in around 65 to 75 AD. And, you know, I typically tell people that my personal belief is that, you know, Mark wrote first and that Matthew and Luke used him as a source. I have a whole episode on that, but it is like neutral. Like it isn't, it's just like, hey, you look at this and you make your decision based on that. But it's interesting that the beginning, according to Mark, isn't all those other things. It's when his actual ministry starts. And there's right there on good news, I think that's important to think about that this isn't the fully worked out gospel. So like if I say the word gospel to you, you probably think of like the worked out theology of the gospel, this like system of atonement set up by Jesus' death and all this stuff.
Right.
But we have to think about that. It says the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ. It's like that good news or that gospel, or in the Greek word euangelion, it's just an announcement.
Right. It's like, hey, this is the start.
This is
of
the
some
start.
good news coming.
Right. So it'd be easy to read in like some worked out stuff, but I think it's important not to quite do that so far. And then we get to of Jesus Christ, and then if you get in yours, does it say Son of God afterwards?
Yeah, Son of God.
So in mine, it doesn't say Son of God. It says it has a footnote, and we go down to B here. Other ancient authorities add Son of God. So what that is there is that,
and my footnote says many do not contain Son of God.
Right.
And so I mean it does proclaim that. It does make that differentiation.
Yeah, because what we have there is like, if you remember the last time me and you talked, and we talked about how they got copied after year after year, we get what we call textual variants after a while. And that's where when we look at two very old manuscripts or several very old manuscripts, and some have it and some don't.
Right.
And so then what happens is a group of guys are in a circle trying to figure out what goes into this translation.
Right.
You know, because every single one, like what version of the Bible is that?
New American Standard.
Okay, yeah. So there was a different meeting for that than this.
Yeah.
And what happened is that they came to a different conclusion in yours than they did in mine.
Right.
And that's what you see there. So in the first verse of Mark, we have a textual variant that is like, you know, but both add it in different ways. One had it and said, hey, some don't have it, and one
didn't have it.
Yeah,
Some,
yeah.
I think that's valid, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and that's not saying that it's not supposed to be there.
No,
but,
right,
But now let's think about this. If it doesn't say Son of God directly, first, if Mark didn't say that, then maybe that kind of plays into the mystery of Mark, because it does take Mark a little while for it to get rolling, for where other people start to realize who Jesus is.
Because without that, he's like, all right, it's written in Isaiah that I'm going to send my messenger, and so he's building up to John the Baptist being there.
That's another interesting thing. When you look at Isaiah there, when it says, as it's written in Isaiah, he's doing something very interesting. That isn't just Isaiah. There's a verse from Malachi in there and a little sprinkle of Exodus.
Right.
So he's blended some verses, but I guess for whatever reason, he's decided to say, you know, as Isaiah said.
Right.
But it's not just Isaiah. It's Malachi, a little sprinkle of Exodus, and apart from Isaiah. So,
which, you know,
no, they did that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's how I was trying to go. But, you know, I guess in that time period, especially to the, you know, because Mark was talking to Jewish people.
Well, possibly, yeah. Well, definitely he was talking to Jewish people, but I think he also could be speaking to a lot of Greek people too as well.
Well, right, because, yes, absolutely, because at some point, Jesus sends Jesus sends them to go and to Rome and all the things, or to Roman cities. So yes, but if he's talking, where I was going was if he was talking to Jewish people, they're going to be, when it says, as it says in Isaiah, they're not going to be like, what's Isaiah?
Oh yeah, they'll know. A lot of people will know.
Yeah,
or they'll have to, or they'll have some Jewish people around to explain it.
Right.
You know, because like Matthew's the biggest one that is, you know, constantly bringing it back to the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Mark does a little bit, but Matthew's the one that's going to say, as it is written, more than Mark. And that's the interesting thing about reading these. You like, we isolate Mark. You start to feel how Mark how he operates. You know what I mean? And then you look at Matthew, then you look at Luke, and then you compare.
Right.
It's interesting. Like if so, like in yours, does it say John the Baptist on verse 4?
Yeah, John the Baptist appeared.
So in mine it says John the Baptizer, and so I was like,
yeah.
well, that's interesting. Baptize. So I was like, which one is it? It's so basically what it is it's neither. It's John, the one who baptizes.
Right.
So it's
baptizer's probably
it's less
closer.
of a title and more of John, the guy out there baptizing
Yeah,
people.
like it's his job.
Yeah.
John the plumber. Or
Yeah,
John,
and so like the Baptist that doesn't come until way later, until English is involved. So they're identifying him as the guy out there by the Jordan River baptizing people.
right, the wild man.
Yeah, but the Baptist came later. There's a note by appeared because the sentence structure can be a little bit different depending on how you translate that word in Greek. But he appeared in the wilderness, and so wilderness has big things in the Bible. Obviously, they were in the wilderness with Moses before they go into the Promised Land after the Exodus, and the wilderness. I think it plays a part of being outside of where the temple is, right? So the religious center in first century Judaism is Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, the actual center, like the center itself, is this big, humongous temple, the second temple, the rebuilt temple, and the one that King Herod put all the fancy additions to. It was probably rebuilt it was destroyed in the late 500s and built in the early 500s. You got to think it's BC, so it's backwards.
Right.
And then Herod puts all the upgrades to it. And so what we're in at this period is called Second Temple Judaism. And so the central place for forgiveness and all these things, these words that John are about to use are about to be described of him, typically are happening in the temple at this point.
Well, because like you're saying, the temple is yours. Well, have you ever? Golly, I can't remember the measurements. Like actual inner Jerusalem was like quarter of a mile, right? Like quarter of a mile, maybe squared or something. It was a very small area, and usually there were 25 to 50,000 people.
Oh yeah, it'd be like 200,000 people for a Passover.
Yeah, then Passover, an extra 200,000 people go. Because you think about it when you talk about where Mark started, and that's after Jesus' parents have left him at the temple. You're like, well, how could this happen?
Right.
Because there's 200,000 extra people, and you just travel in groups of people, so you just assume that
maybe so.
Like, yeah, start walking. We're gonna head. And you know what I mean? And
Yeah, you never know.
So, but anyway,
I've lost my kids too. Shout out to Mary and Joseph.
But when you think about the wilderness, okay, there wasn't all the modern conveniences. There weren't. I mean, there were highways, but they weren't like what we know as highways. So there were. Once you got outside the city, once you got outside the safe place.
Yeah,
it was wilderness.
Yeah, and so it's probably on the east side. They were probably, you have Jerusalem, and then you have kind of Jericho over to the east, and the Jordan Valley, and then the Jordan River is flowing through there.
Okay,
they
I can't do that in my mind. So
I can show you.
I'm just believing you.
I'll show you right here. So now we're shout to the maps in the back of the Bible. So, do you have any maps in the back of the Bible? I can show you. If you see Judea, which is down at the bottom,
Got the temple.
there's Jerusalem, and over there is Jericho.
Oh, okay.
And so then you see beside Jericho is the river, and it's this giant river, the Jordan River, that goes through, and they have to cross this thing over and over and over again.
Okay.
It's a way that they travel. If you travel from like Galilee to Judea, a lot of times they have to travel.
Yeah.
A lot of times they would go around Samaria because they had beef with Samaria, as a good Samaritan will tell you.
Yeah.
And if you get over here to like the Decapolis, it would help if you looked at a map right now. If you would just check out a map of the of Jesus' time, the Decapolis over there. There's an outside. So like if you look on the outside, these are mainly Greek places, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you get right here, you have Galilee, then you have Samaria, then you have Judea, you have Idumea, and a lot of what Jesus does takes place between here, but mainly up here.
Correct.
But so when Jesus does come down, he's going to have to travel from up here, and he's got to go around. He's typically got to cross over the Jordan River, and eventually, I just say all that to say the wilderness is outside of there, and I wonder if that's Mark saying that the new way the system is going to work is not tied to the temple, because look where the beginning of the gospel is starting outside of what the original system was. So he appeared in the wilderness proclaiming a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. There's a lot of stuff there. So John didn't invent baptism. There was already like ritual washings.
Ritual cleansing.
Yeah, but he is baptizing people. It is, people do have to, and it says, here's interesting, it says, the whole Judean region and all the people of Jerusalem were going out to him and were baptized by him in the Jordan River, confessing their sins. So it wasn't so not only is John is drawing a humongous crowd. Right, and when he says all Judea and all Jerusalem, you got to think. I just showed you the whole region is humongous. Now, obviously, it's got to be hyperbole more than likely. It's not like
every single person's rolling up.
But I think Mark is using like sweeping language. He's showing like.
Well, it's like when I pull up somewhere and I'm like, hell, everybody and their brothers here.
Yeah, everybody in Texarkana is here on the border tonight.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's that deal. So we know that John has a humongous following. Humongous,
huge.
And the thing is that a lot of people tend to write him off after he dies, but I think we can see that it doesn't stop. Like John's movement doesn't turn into Jesus' movement necessarily.
Well, even some of his followers come and ask Jesus, like, "Hey, John wants to know.
Yeah,
are you the one?"
Yeah, check this out in Acts. So now we're all the way in the time of Acts, in Acts 18. So we're getting several years. We're 20 or so years after Jesus has gone. That's just my estimate by how far we are in Acts when this happens. It's chapter 18, verse 24. Now there came to Ephesus a Jew named Apollos from Alexandria. He was an eloquent man, well versed in the Scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with burning enthusiasm and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus. Though he only knew the baptism of John, he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him aside and explained the way of God to him more accurately. And when he wished to cross over to Achaia, and the brothers and sisters encouraged him and wrote to the disciples to welcome him. On his arrival, he greatly helped those who, through grace, had become believers. For he powerfully refuted the Jews in public, showing the Scriptures of the Messiah in Jesus. So there's a lot of stuff there, especially when you get to the end about what he does with the knowledge. But he's approaching this thing as he's like, okay, I'm preaching for Jesus. I'm doing all this stuff from what he had heard. And then he runs into the real movement.
Right.
And they're like, hey, you only know about the stuff John was talking about.
Right.
And so so then they had to re-educate him. But what that does for us, because you got to think in Acts 18, when in the middle of Acts, the story switches from Peter, and not even the middle, kind of sort of the middle, but it switches from Peter being the main character to Paul. And then it's pretty much all Paul throughout the rest of the way. And after this, they've already had this Jerusalem Council in AD 50. So it has to be after that.
Right.
So we got to be in the 50s at this point.
Okay.
And so that's got to be, 20-ish years after Jesus.
Right.
We still...
Because we've got Jesus' death between...
33, more than
30,
likely.
Yeah.
And so that means John's movement hasn't slowed down. There's more examples of that. They run into some other people that just know John stuff.
Right.
And so when they run into...
Which makes sense, right? And we kind of covered this last time, because you don't have the internet, you don't have cell phones, you don't have...
No.
So this group hears Mark stuff, and this guy in this group hears of someone who knew of John the Baptist, and so it's all got to come together.
Right.
And so that's where these letters are, hey, and when it says they wrote to, that's them saying, hey, this is Apollos, he believes, and we're sending him to you. Here's our letter from us verifying him. And that's what a lot of these letters are doing. And I mean, they're not all in the Bible, obviously, but when they're talking about that, that's what they're doing. This is our notice. If you think about it in any old movie you see where they stamp it in wax so that you know it's from them, that's what they're doing. This is our seal of this person is verified through us, and that's how they're spreading this thing.
Yeah. I think Acts being written later is interesting because it's going to tell you Acts is probably written somewhere between 80 and 90. maybe even later than that. It's a lot of people think it's Luke is the same author,
Right.
And so he's writing about stuff from far off. So I always wonder, like, my question is like how much is that influence of like there's been a lot of time developed in the story, but he does get things right in history. He does get things that go against Josephus sometimes, which is interesting, which is the deal. But Luke is at least attempting to be an historian, especially like with the deal we talked about, like on the birth narrative, where he's trying to tie it to all these historical things that happened, and then you. But yeah, dude, these I think a lot of these people were real. I do think that, and I wrote down like every location in Mark. That's one thing I did in prep for this. I just went through and wrote down every single location.
Oh, that's awesome.
And most of them are places that like archaeologists and historians will say, like, yeah, there's a couple places like Dalmanthana, and they're just like, yeah, I don't know what that is. We don't, like most people are like, we don't know what that is.
But you know, throughout history, that's kind of been an overarching theme is, oh, we've never heard of this place. Then throughout time, they'll discover a coin, or they'll discover, and they're like, okay, this leads back to...
Well, Nazareth was debated for a long time.
Right.
And now they kind of feel like that they at least know where Nazareth was, yeah.
You know, well, and it's even interesting that you're saying, I've been seeing this a lot on my TikTok algorithm, and I don't know how I got into it, really. I mean, I watch stuff about faith and whatnot, but I learned this in a class years ago was, you know, there are very limited sources on if Julius Caesar was real, and and then, you know, however many there are, then, you know, there's a couple hundred, you could say, and then there's, you know, for like
well, the Bible mentions him though,
right, no, but but so, and that's one of them, right? But then when you get to Jesus, there's 25,000, right? The mentions of him. So when you say the people in the Bible, it's like, okay, historically, even take away the divinity of Jesus.
Right. Yeah, I think Jesus is a real person.
Yeah, right. I think even secular historians are like, yeah, he was real, but, you know, and then they
to decide what happened. Yeah.
And so it's always interesting to, okay, he was real. These towns, even if, you know, most of them, a lot of them have been discovered throughout time. So just to your point of, just gotta figure out which ones have been discovered, and or maybe what the word means. Maybe they were renamed. A lot of them were renamed.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you could, I don't know. Before I would jump and say, just because the towns are right, we know this is actual history. I would be a little wary of making that jump because that's huge. Because I'd also say like New York City's real in Avengers. You know what I mean? And Iron Man doesn't die on top of a building to aliens. So you know, just because
not yet,
not yet. But I do think it certainly doesn't hurt. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know. All this stuff is. I always say every time I show up here, I always end up saying this at least once, but. It's really difficult to know what happened in the first century, but to have things confirmed I feel like that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. And I don't think we're reading like the Old Testament. My personal opinion, I do think like not that it can get shakier as far as the history, but I think when we're reading the New Testament specifically, I think that there is a lot of actual history sprinkled in there, and now you have to decide like if everything is history or if not, you know.
Right. When we've already done that once. All Judea was there. Well.
Yeah.
Were a lot of people there?
Yeah,
yes.
Probably so. A humongous crowd, which is also another interesting question, which makes me think, if Jesus comes from Galilee, which he's in Nazareth growing up, from what we can tell, we have no idea from what happens between like 2 or 3 to 12, and then we have no idea what happens from like jump. 12 to like 30.
Well, and where is it? It is written that, you know, all the acts of Jesus would fill up multiple
John, John's gospel says that if he wrote down everything he did, it's interesting. Like I don't know, like because Mark just says, hey. You know, the beginning of the good news is here.
Here we go.
And it's ministry. And then someone like John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And like Jesus was here before like there was anything at all, like even a universe and stuff like that.
Well,
it's
that's
just
triune
like
God stuff.
Yeah.
Which I hold to.
It's interesting. It's like Mark and John, like, and there's probably, you know, probably 30 or 40 years separating when they're written. Maybe. You know, John. It's typically thought that John wrote later. And so, I don't know, you could look at it in a couple different ways. You could say that John is just given the more theological side of it, and it does 100% line up with Mark. Or you could say that could say that there was like some progress,
Right.
like as the story develops, or And so I wonder, because there's so many things in Mark that don't get mentioned, like because of here's something super interesting, because we don't get a birth narrative in Mark, we never get any mention of Joseph at all.
Yeah.
And there's no genealogy. So, I wonder if Joseph...
Which one is it that gives the... Is it Matthew that gives the
Matthew
genealogy
and Luke
of Joseph?
yeah, they both get the genealogy of Joseph, in my opinion, because they both end with Joseph.
Right.
But that's just my opinion. And they don't line up. But that's just also my opinion. But I wonder if he died, like, early.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, and so by the time, we get some mentions of Mary, by the time Jesus is 30...
Right.
I wonder,
he might have gone to get the milk.
Yeah, he might have. Because think about that. In Mark, we have absolutely no sign of Joseph.
Right.
And if it starts when Jesus is 30, and then you got thinking like the life expectancy and stuff around there.
Yeah.
If he was just a carpenter, like working in the sun and stuff all the time, or whatever he did, he could have been a stonemason, he could have been some type of worker.
Carpenters made good money in that time. And so carpenters make good money now if they know what they're doing, honestly.
Yeah.
But, when people are saying, well, Jesus was just a carpenter, I'm like, whoa. Carpenters were not the bottom crust of civilization.
Yeah, but I imagine they could be too, though. Like, I think it'd be hard for us to say exactly like how well off they were.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that, but I don't. Yeah. I've always held that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't look as carpenters as being lowly here, right? Yeah. I think of, hey, if you're good at it and you know what you're doing, you make good money, so. And then in that time period, so that's just kind of what I've always associated with.
Yeah. Well, Matthew calls him one of the Gospels calls him the carpenter's son, and the other one calls him the carpenter, and they're telling the exact same story.
Right.
It's when Jesus goes back to his hometown.
Yeah.
So in a way, he might not even be one.
Right. Yeah.
He might just be the son of him.
That's
true.
True.
But man, we just don't know. That's just another thing. Like what did Jesus do for a living between 12 and 30? You say. He was a carpenter's son and possibly a carpenter.
Right.
Yeah, like that's kind of like
had to be an apprentice somewhere.
Oh, you could, maybe so, or maybe he did something else. There's all these wild stories. He traveled to India and learned all this stuff. It is interesting to try to figure out like where he got some of this stuff, especially if you think that Jesus was just a regular guy.
Right.
Then you kind of have to think about like where did he get some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Some of this stuff.
Because even I don't remember where it is in the Bible, but it's like he's telling a story and they're like. Who's this guy?
At the beginning,
in the temple
that's at the beginning. He's in the synagogue, and the scribes are looking at him like, "What the heck? Like, well, how do you do that?" And I think a lot of that specific story is pretty cool. It's when he cast out the first demon in Mark, and it's like they're really kind of more impressed that he's speaking with such authority.
Right,
that's what got them, and they're like, he's speaking like. He's the source, and
like
they were like that. Made them nervous. Dude, that story's really interesting. I've already done an episode. A man with an unclean spirit. They
Mark what?
1:21. I could talk. I could probably talk for 4 hours on Mark chapter 1. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there. Chapter 1, verse 21. A man with an unclean spirit. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes.
Yeah.
Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet, and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. So that's a cool story. First of all, Capernaum, we know Jesus of Nazareth, but Jesus' headquarters seems to be Capernaum.
Right.
And Capernaum is right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. So if you one thing I really noticed when I wrote down all these locations was they're crossing they're crossing the
forth.
sea,
Yeah.
and the Sea of Galilee is not actually a sea. Shout out to them naming it wrong, but that's just because back in their time, like a big giant thing of water, they're like,
that's the sea.
that's the sea. It's actually the Lake of Gennesaret, is what the Greeks would have called it, and it's a lake. It's a big giant freshwater lake. I say giant. It's bigger than Wright Patman. I looked at the dimensions. I was like,
Patman's 32,000 acres, 34,000 acres.
yeah. So I looked at the width and so it'd be like crossing Wright Patman, basically.
Just for every good old boy listening, I know you can put in at ramp 3, open her wide up, and it takes about 20 minutes to get to Atlanta.
Yeah. I think they would have been rowing.
Yeah. So it's a few days journey probably.
If you look at your deal, like you probably, I think you have maps in the back if yours. If you find the Sea of Galilee and you look at Jesus' ministry, you can see that, especially in Mark, most of everything that happens.
I have a concordance in the back. Not
Okay. I'll just show you right here. So if you look right here, dude, that's the Sea of Galilee up there, right there. And almost all of what happens in Mark is right there around this sea. So most of the stories.
Boom.
Yep, there you go. A lot of the stories will start off and they crossed. And they crossed. And it happens all the time, and it'll be up to the north a little bit.
Yeah, I see Capernaum right there on the edge.
That is where most of what Jesus does takes place. So if you see, so if we skip to verse 29, as soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told her about her at once. He came and took her by the hand, lifted her up, and then the fever left. What a lot of people think is...
And she waited on them.
Yeah, and she got up and served him. But what a lot of people think is that because Peter and Andrew, and then eventually James and John, who he meets before this, we skipped that story.
Yeah.
But that's why that becomes their headquarters, because they have a place there.
Oh, makes sense, right?
Yeah, because if we look at when Jesus calls his first disciples, back at verse 16, as Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And immediately they left their nets and followed them. And he went a little further. He saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, who were in their boat mending the nets. Immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed them. So,
what's Dad thinking? That's always been my question.
Dude, I said that in my episode.
Oh,
I was like, I work for my dad, right? I have for my whole life. You know what I mean? And I just imagine some guy walks up and it's like
Joe,
I'll come make you a pumper of people while I'm pumping a tank.
Yeah,
and I just say, all right, Dad. And I just leave him on the job. I was like, dang, that's crazy.
That's always been my thought. Is like, I guess I've got two different views of it. And this is just, like I said, a little Zachology. One, Dad's like, you know what, this feels right. Go make it happen. This is your calling. And it just hits him. The other one, he's like, oh,
yeah,
you can go, but we're going to put these nets up and we're going to get everything in order, so I'm not just stranded here.
It says they immediately left.
I don't know.
I think it. Because even Jesus says, I think Jesus says that I've come to turn, people against their fathers, and you know what I'm saying. I think
fathers against sons and brothers against
something like that.
Yeah,
but I think I think according to Mark's language, it's so hard to tell. Because Mark uses the word immediately 40 times.
Right. Well, immediate only means one thing.
Yeah.
Right
so according, and that's why people think that Mark writes fast. So in those two verses we read, or in those four verses right there, it says immediately It says immediately twice in there. Here's something. If you want to play along with me and watch and check out how so I talked about doing synopsises, or I was going to. I lost track of what I was saying. What I do in the second part of a lot of these episodes is I'll figure out what Mark's saying, right? And we'll go through like what I've been saying. There's a footnote here. There's a deal there. Right. This is the context for this, the history, the geography, all that. And then I'll say, okay, this same story is because it's Mark. This same story has got to be in Matthew and Luke almost always, right? Because there's 90% of Mark and Matthew, and
a lot of times
60
it'll tie you to it. Like
if you look at the bottom. So if we go from Jesus calls his first disciples, if we go back to Matthew, in Matthew, it should be chapter 3,
which is the book before Mark. For all you new,
no, it's chapter 4. Yeah. So. So if you go to Matthew chapter 4, verse 18, I want to show you how similar these are. I just read you the exact same story. Now I'm going to read you the exact same story in Matthew. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." Immediately they let their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Switch back over and look. It works so good when I can put it on the screen, and you can look back and forth. The closeness between this story, between Matthew and Mark, is absolutely incredible, which makes you wonder how it got so close.
Well, and that's where you and I differ because I've heard you say that before, but my thought always is if they were there.
Well, Mark wasn't there.
Right, that's true.
And it's not even the Christian tradition for Mark to be there. So Mark, if our earliest mention of Mark, which I have episodes that describe a lot of this stuff, it kind of like lays the foundation before we get to stuff. We're skipping around. We're having fun though. But so there's a guy named Papias, right? And I gave you the whole Papias spill for Matthew on the last time I was here, or the time before that. But Papias also says something about Mark. He said that Mark would eventually become Peter's translator,
right? And
that he wrote down Peter's sermons the best he could remember, but not in chronological order. So Mark never met Jesus, never knew Jesus, but wrote down the best he could of what Peter said about Jesus from memory, the best he could, but not in order. So we know it's not in order. And if Matthew and Luke copy the order, which is
where you lean.
Because I've done the order. I've wrote down every single thing. Right. This happens here, and this happens here. Right. And then I can show you in here, and it's like, oh, this is like this. And so, that's what I'm saying. I'm not just saying, like, you have to think this because I think this. I'm saying, like, there is a lot of things that have led me to think this, and, like, I can show you, but it's still important for you to draw whatever conclusion. But, so they're so close, and it's interesting. The quotes of Jesus are the same. So here's the first part. Like, follow you, I'll make you fishers of people or fishers of men, however it describes in your deal. That's just translation differences.
Yeah.
You can say that Jesus' quotes are exact because that's exactly what he said.
Right.
And that sounds good, and I like that.
Right.
But what gets me is not the exact quotes of Jesus being the same,
exact story, the stories.
But the sentence structure.
Yeah. Well, because you hold, I believe, that Matthew took a lot of, just kind of rewrote what Mark said, and that's where you're at.
Yeah, well, I think Matthew used Mark as a source.
Yeah.
And I think right here you can, if you interpret it that way, in my opinion, I think this is an example of how close Matthew is willing to get. Oh, it's there. And here's what gets me. Matthew only uses the word immediately like 18 times, and Mark uses it 40 times. Almost every time he uses immediately, it's when these verses are super close to what Mark says. Mm-hmm. So Mark, it's nothing for him to say immediately twice in this one little section. But when Matthew says immediately twice in the same spot, you start to wonder.
His normal sentence structure,
right?
I don't know.
And so those are deals. A couple things they did leave out though, because I think Matthew is constantly editing Mark, and I'll show you a really cool example of that.
Okay.
But the things they did, they left out the hired servants on this, and there's hired servants in Mark, and there's no hired servants in Matthew, which makes it feel a little better in Mark. It's like, okay, they're leaving their father, but at least they're leaving him with the guys. But in Matthew, it is just they left the boats. And and it was just them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, I want to show you something really cool. If you'll go with me to Luke, and we'll look at that same story from Luke. This to me, like, some people may think this is nerdy stuff, but to me, this is so much fun.
Luke what?
I have to find. Jesus calls his first disciples. Chapter 5, verse 1.
Here's a family tree of Herod.
Oh, that's cool.
Luke chapter 5, verse 1, you said?
Yes, sir.
All
right. Once while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, so the Sea of Galilee, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw two boats that were at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing their nets. He got onto the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to burst. So they signaled their partners on the other boat to come and help. And they came and filled both boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were astounded at the catch of fish that they had just taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they had left everything and followed him. All right, so very similar story,
Right.
different details on
for
several
sure.
different accounts there. So
First of all, he sinks 2 boats because they're filled up with fish. Right?
yeah,
Huge
and,
detail.
yeah. So that doesn't happen in Matthew or Mark. There's also no mention of a crowd. So it says that Jesus was walking along the Sea of Galilee in both Matthew and Mark, but in this one, he's getting pressured so much by the crowd that he goes out into the boat. And so in this story, he doesn't actually get in Mark and Matthew, he doesn't actually get in the boat.
Right.
They come out of the boats and come to him. But in this story, he goes and gets in the boat. And then it presents the story as 2 separate conversions in Matthew and Mark. It says first it was Peter and Andrew.
Right.
Then they walked down a little bit, and then it was James and John.
Right.
But then if we go to Luke, it says that Luke describes them as partners already.
Right. So, well,
And this is, I'm not saying this is a contradiction.
No,
I'm just saying this is how the stories can differ a little
Yeah,
bit while they're still
absolutely.
describing the same thing. So we have Matthew, who is incredibly close, just super close. And then we have Luke that, adds all this other stuff. And so then I ask the question, I always think in my mind anytime I see something like this, I say, where did, even like the catchers of people, that's not the exact quote of Jesus. So
no, I'll make you fishers of men.
yeah, it's the same. It's similar. It's super similar, but it is Jesus. So like, what did Jesus say in that moment? But what I'm thinking about is, where does Luke get this extra material? Because we know Luke didn't see Jesus either. More than likely, he was just kind of like Mark, an after deal, and he kind of ran in Paul's circle. And so where does Luke get the rest of that story? So there's a couple options. It could be oral tradition, obviously. Right. This story just passed on. And,
I hold that they were all eyewitness accounts, right? I mean, are people that knew Jesus, I should say.
Even Luke and Mark?
Yeah, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John.
So you think Mark and Luke knew Jesus and walked with Jesus during his earthly ministry?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's not like a...
Right.
That's typically what most most scholars
and
will
I could
say.
be wrong.
Like,
I'm not going to say that I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
that's the way I've always understood it.
Right. Okay. Well, for me, from what I've studied, I don't think that's the case. I think Mark comes later, and he is a part of like what we said, Peter's camp.
Right.
And I think Luke comes later, and he's a part of Paul's camp.
Okay.
And so Matthew, it's attributed to Matthew. If Matthew wrote it, Matthew would have been a disciple that was there, and the beloved disciple is thought to be John, and so that ties John
because
to
even
there.
Where is it? Is it in John? And he's like, and I outran or whatever. We were talking about being faster. Just isn't that in John?
Yeah. So
like,
maybe, but it never says John is the beloved disciple.
No.
It's a tradition that
but the beloved. Golly, where is it that he was?
Right. So like for me personally, I don't think they all were eyewitnesses. Now they had accesses to. I think they had access to eyewitnesses or to eyewitness to some of those things. But I think like not even.
Which that doesn't.
Peter witnessed. I don't think Peter witnessed everything that happened because there's stuff that happens that Peter ain't there at.
Right. And that doesn't affect.
Right. I don't think it should neither. I don't think it should. But it does make it interesting when we start asking, like, where did this specific author get that piece? So what scholars will do is they'll call something that's just in Mark or something that's Mark heavy, they'll call it Markan.
Right.
And if something is just in Matthew, they'll call it Matthean.
Okay.
And if it's just in Luke, they'll call it Lucan. So every once in a while, you'll get something that is, this ending of this story would be Lucan.
Right.
This is something that Luke gathered. We read Luke 1 before where Luke explains why he's writing the gospel in the first place. He's like, I've seen all these other narratives, and I'm going to write a better one, basically.
Right. Well, and Luke seems like he'd be like, all right, look, this is what they said. Here's the way I saw it, heard it, whatever. There were a lot of people there. He was walking on but there's so many people that he's like, I got to go on the boat so that you're up on me.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hey, yeah, he did, but he did call them and then them, but they're all working together. So these guys were in this boat, and then those guys are over at the QT working in their boat, but we've got a crowd. So it's like, hey, bring that boat. We're about to sink it with fish. Right. It's kind of just me putting the good old boy on it. Is where I was. This is what I think is funny. John 20, 3-5. This is from the NIV. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first.
And people think that's the beloved disciple. Yeah. You think he wrote that in?
They think John's just like throwing a little shade at Peter, like, I also am faster than you. Like I've always found humor in that. We're talking about, you're trying to get to the tomb to see if Jesus, the Son of God, really isn't there, but you're like, but also I outran you.
Yeah, that's funny.
Just a little aside, I've always. And so other translations on that are, so they both ran together, and the other disciple did outrun Peter. The disciple outran Peter. No matter how you do it, it is
somebody outran somebody.
And I just think that's hilarious. Because it's like, that's a very man thing to do. Like, oh we were there.
Yeah, we were there. I outran it.
But I beat him. And don't let him, I don't care who Peter claims he is.
Yeah.
I'm faster than that guy. I'm better than that guy. And so I just think that, to me, that's always put a human element to some of this. Is like, not only were we there, he's slow.
I like that. I do. I personally think there's a lot of human element there. I think there's more human element than you would agree.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think of some more stuff to show you back and forth, but it's cool what you. Okay, so let me show you this one. Let me show you a part where I feel like Matthew is editing. Some situations where I feel like Matthew specifically is editing Mark. Like he saw it, but then possibly edited it. And I had to go to a picture because I took a screenshot of this. It's easy to do. All right, so the first thing is when Jesus goes back to his hometown. This is in like Mark 6. It'll be hard for me to pull this up because I don't. I just have a screenshot,
I went to Matthew. Hold on, we'll get to Mark.
If we go to Mark 6, and that's just Jesus goes back to his hometown. Rejection at Nazareth. So if we go to verse, I can read the whole story or I can read you the important part. You tell me what you want.
Where are we?
We're either at 6 verse 4 or 6 verse 1. I'll read. You want me to read the whole story or just the part that the point has to do with?
Go with the point, and then we'll see. We'll come back to it if we need to.
Okay, so basically Jesus is back at his hometown, and that's kind of what you need. And they don't believe you. They're like, "Hey, we know your brother and your sisters and all that stuff." Then Jesus said to them,
"Which that's a whole nother conversation too. Brothers and sisters."
Yeah, Jesus clearly has brothers and sisters according to the gospel.
That's the boat I'm into.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. The Catholics kind of have to dance around it. They kind of have to try to work the Greek word.
Well, everybody's Jesus' brothers.
Yeah.
Because Jesus does say that.
I think they try to use it as like cousins. I think that's the way they try to get out of that one. But
Mary was only a virgin when Jesus was born, and after that she had kids.
Yeah, it seems like it. Mm-hmm. It seems like it. It is okay. So then we get to verse 4. This is what Jesus says. He says, "Then Jesus said to them, 'Prophets are not without honor except in their hometown and among their own kin and in their own house.' And he could not do, and he could do no deed of power there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and cured them. And he was amazed at their unbelief." So remember that. Then we're going to swap over to Matthew 58, verse 58. I only have the verse here. Matthew, the rejection. I just had to use the titles. Now I'm actually glad they have titles.
Yeah, right.
We could talk about that too here in a minute.
They're added.
Golden rule, Jesus cleanses the man. Man, dude, where is the rejection? Anyways, it'll do better for me if I just read this to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, okay, so we're at the same spot. But Jesus said to them, prophets are not without honor except in their hometown and in their own house. And he did not do many deeds of power there because of their unbelief.
That's two completely different points.
Right. So here's what I think. I think this could, and I'm not going to say this is exactly what this is. What I'm saying is this could be an example of Matthew looking at Mark and softening his words, making an edit there. Because it is a big claim. If you tell me that I could not make a three-pointer or that I did not make a three-pointer,
right,
it's a big difference. Because if you tell me I can't, I'm saying I would be offended. Like, but if we say, because that's a big statement for Mark to say he went there not. And because of their belief, it's almost like in Mark's version, you could almost guess that maybe his power was actually tied to their beliefs.
Right.
Like maybe someone has to believe in Jesus for him to be able to do a miracle, right? And it does
Which is wild if you hold that he's the Son of God, right?
Yeah. So, and like Mark, up until this point, where in Mark 1, depending if they put that Son of God in there or not, we only get that the only one to even recognize that Jesus is like something else is a demon from the story we read earlier.
Yeah. Demon clearly is like, I know who you are. What have you come to do to me?
Exactly. So, could not.
Side note, demons in hell know the name of Jesus. They shiver at his name.
Maybe so, according to the Bible.
Yeah, there you go.
But, so, could not. And then Matthew, if I'm saying hypothetical, we're in hypothetical land.
Yeah.
Matthew is looking at his source of Mark, or maybe he hasn't memorized. You never know back then. And he goes to start writing down. He looks at that and goes, nah, I know Jesus. I know the tradition. Jesus didn't do any works there, but it wasn't because he couldn't. He just did it.
Right.
And I think that could possibly be an example of Matthew softening him. I'll show you another one. So, in the story of the rich young ruler.
I'm just kind of looking for that in Matthew when you're talking.
I could find it.
That's okay.
I had to use the old chat GPT, brother.
No, yeah, I should have done that.
What is that? Rejection.
That's
in Nazareth, Matthew. It'll pull up for us. Here. I said it'll pull up for us. There you go. Okay, Matthew 13, 53 through 55.
I was too far back.
Yeah.
13:53.
Yeah, and we'll read out the Bible to make sure people don't think I'm in here fooling around.
And it came about he departed from there, and coming to his hometown, he began teaching in their synagogue, so that they became astonished and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers?" It is not. Well, we just talked about this though. Is not this the carpenter's son? Is his mother not called? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brother James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? So there's 4 brothers listed, and his sisters.
Yep.
Which that's very much in the old school way of it. Was like, and he had some sisters.
Yeah.
and they not all with us. Where then did this man get all of these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household." And here you go. And he did not do many miracles there because of their unbelief. And then mine has, in like little italic words, for miracles, it has works of power.
Right. But I think there's a difference there. Not necessarily a contradiction. I think it's a softening, in my opinion, where Matthew said Jesus could have done something if he wanted to. He did not do something.
I'm going to go to the Blue Letter Bible. Do you have that app?
No. I just have the regular Bible app.
Blue Letter Bible, man, it's pretty cool. Because it's got...
So what do you think when you see that?
You know, I'm not one to limit God, and I believe Jesus and God... 3 in 1, so I would think that just off the jump, and obviously I haven't studied this, I would think that Matthew's like, no, it wasn't that he couldn't do it.
Right.
It's that because they didn't believe, he wouldn't do it.
Right.
Because, and that's often used, like, you ever have, like, an idea, like, with your boys, right? And you're like, hey, I'm going to go do this, and this, and there'll be one that's like, yeah, do it. And then there's like 3 that are like, man, you can't do that. That's
Can't
stupid.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much human nature is, that's just the carpenter's son. Why does he think he's special? Why is this guy running for Congress? Who does he think he is? I went to school with him. He couldn't even read very well.
Exactly.
I mean, that...
Yeah, that story definitely makes sense that he comes home and they're like, bro, we know you, dude.
Much. Yeah, let's see. Concordance 1358, and he did not do many miracles because of their unbelief. So the breakdown rooted from the actual I guess this would have been Greek.
Yeah, definitely Greek.
Rooted and translated, and so it showed me the Greek words, and then and he did not do their miracles many because of, and then this apistia is unbelief and because of is dia. So
I think in the story of Matthew, he can do a miracle whenever he wants. He chose not to do a miracle because they were unbelief. But I think in Mark almost words it in a way that's like, he couldn't.
To your point, if Mark didn't yet believe that he was the Son of God, then...
I think Mark knows. I think he's just letting the listener figure it out. The reader. I think he's letting the reader figure it out. Because you don't get anything from, like, even the disciples about him until almost where we start getting into the passion narrative where he's about to go, be crucified.
Let's hold on. There's some commentaries on this too. 13. This is... Here's a commentary on it. The parallel gospel of Matthew 13:58 is found in Mark 6, 1 through 6, Luke 4:14 through 30 is possibly another parallel account of the same event described as Matthew. Matthew describes when Jesus returned to his hometown, yet offended by him. He performed only a few miracles there, following his firsthand account. And once again, firsthand leads me to believe that Matthew was there. Following his firsthand account of Jesus' parables and explanations, Jesus resumes his narrative when Jesus departed from there. He came to his hometown.
Yeah, that just means that they accept the tradition that Matthew wrote it, which is on the table for anybody to make their own decision and not listen to Joe. You make your own decision.
Yeah, or Zach, because I don't know.
There you go.
Normally, the local Pharisees assigned a particular... Jesus was a rabbi, which was a teacher. He had... Jesus' notoriety had increased. Luke's chronological...
I'm going to look up this next example. I'm going to show you while you're doing that.
And the eyes of all of him. Well, anyway, I was trying to go into this, but this commentary is so many pages. I was hoping it'd be quicker. Makes it hard to do a podcast over it. Anyway, yeah, I don't believe that Jesus was limited in his power. I believe that he was like, hey, if you don't believe, I'm just going to, later in the Gospels, he says, hey, dust off your sandals and move on. And I believe this is an example of that. Because that sticks to who Jesus was. Hey, if they don't believe, dust it off and roll on.
Yeah.
And so this is the same type situation in my mind.
I would agree. I would think that, but what does that say about Mark? That's what makes me wonder. Like, what does Mark have?
Yeah, why did he phrase it that way? That's the question.
He may have had a lesser understanding from writing earlier.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
So the rich young ruler, or the rich young man.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
in Mark 9:17 has something really interesting. And then it parallels in Matthew something 16. I should have wrote these down. Matthew.
Everybody's like, we're just listening to a straight up Bible study.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's,
Mark 9.
I'm promoting a show that is it's literally a Bible study. I'm just going to sit around and do stuff like this and look at things.
Mark 9:17, you said?
Yeah, and then I'm trying to find the rich young ruler in Matthew. They're like, dude, they should have wrote this down.
Hey, this is podcast, baby. This is the way it works sometimes. Hey, Joe, and I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Just for anybody has forgotten, Joe's got a show coming out tomorrow. This is what it is. It's the Agnostic Bible Study.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at this stuff. Anyways, I'll read it. I'll find it. Okay, one last search. Rich young ruler in Matthew, and yeah, there we go. Isn't that crazy how technology will get us going? Where? All right, 19:16 through 22. So Matthew, I'll look both of these up. Matthew, we'll go back to back. This is another deal where it's close, but very interesting, almost like, I'll let you decide what you think. I'm going to show you what I think. All right, so first of all, I'm going to read Mark's. So, the rich young man, damn, I don't need all that. I'm just trying to give me the whole breakdown. I know the breakdown. All right, so we are in Mark, chapter 10, verse 17. So I got it wrong. Yeah, 10, verse 17.
There we go.
As he was setting out on a journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know the commandments. You should not murder. You should not commit adultery. You should not steal. You should not bear false witness. You should not defraud. Honor your father and mother." He said to them, "Teacher, I have kept all these since my youth." Jesus looked at him and loved him and said, "You lack one thing. Go sell what you own and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." When he heard this, he was shocked and went away grieving, for he had many possessions. So the big part there on this example is, first of all, it's a sad story. The guy has a whole bunch of stuff, and Jesus says that stuff's getting in the way, and he says, well, I guess it's going to stay in the way. And leaves that.
Jesus is like, it seems like you've made this an idol. Get rid of that idol. And the guy's like, I don't know if I can do that.
All right, then we switch over to, but the big part is, why do you call me good? Mm-hmm. And so we'll focus on that, and we'll move over to 19.
Staying in Mark?
No, 19, Matthew, my fault. Matthew 19, verse 16. So I want to really focus on the beginning of this exchange.
All right, go.
All right. Then someone came to him and said, "Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life?" And he said to him, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is one who is good. If you wish to enter life, keep the commandments." And okay, there's no sense of reading the rest of the story. It's all similar there. He just tells them, get rid of them, rich ones, and he leaves sad. The important part here is that the rich man in this version, Matthew's version of the story, very close, but has changed some key things. Someone came to him and said, "Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life?" In Mark, he says, Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" First of all, good is put in different places.
Right.
So he just says, what must I do in Mark? Good teacher. Yeah. And in this one, he says,
what deed shall I do?
What deed? Or he just calls him teacher. So the word good has been moved around. Mm-hmm. Now he's just a teacher. He's not a good teacher. He's just a teacher. And that allows Jesus to answer in a way that doesn't sound quite so crazy. Because I ain't gonna lie, man. When I read that the first time, Mark, when I first was like getting back into it, and I was like, I'm reading Mark, and I read Mark, and Jesus says, "Why do you call me good?" I was like, no, wait a minute. What do we have here? Why do you call me good? There's no one good but the Father. And I'm like, now wait a minute. Now Jesus is, I'm thinking of like the Trinity all worked out.
Right.
Jesus is the Son, and is like the third person of the Trinity. Yeah. He has to be good. They say he's sinless. He has to be the sinless, perfect lamb for the sacrifice to mimic the sacrificial system from the Old Testament. And Jesus says, "I am not, why do you call me good?" And then when Matthew sits down, and then we're in hypothetical land. If Matthew sits down, he's looking at Mark and he's reading this. He says, almost like in the other one where he's just like, could not, did not. And then he's like, what good deed? He says to them, why do you ask about what is good? Let's talk about what deed is good, not who is good.
Right.
And then he does say there is one who is good, but that doesn't necessarily cancel out because Jesus could be involved in that one in Matthew's reading.
You have to, and I'm going to step way out of my lane here. And so I'm not comfortable here just because I don't know enough to know. But in the tradition of the Greeks and a lot of that influence being on Rome, and then, I believe it was Plato that was like, what is good? Right. So when you talk about people questioning in that time, so if they were looking at it from this lens and with that being kind of where it came from, so what did Plato mean to have a good day? So it wasn't necessarily good in our sense of what we think of it as good. It was, okay, I did my work. I didn't die. I accomplished my task. Okay. It was a fulfilling day. It was a satisfactory day. But so when he says, what is good, if you take it from the Greek context of their understanding, their argument of going back to Plato, of what, or as Bill and Ted would say Socrates, what is good. So that's kind of where I am on that. Just like, well, why am I good? What makes it good?
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's look up good in that story. Greek word.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot we can do that.
Yep.
Where are we, Matthew?
The Greek word, agathos. Teacher, what good thing must I do to inherit life? Why do you ask me what is good? Agathos, it's using the same word. Good, beneficial, upright, morally excellent. It can refer to moral goodness, generosity, inner virtue, something beneficial or useful. Do they use same word for good in Mark parallel? It is so hard to spell parallel. I just want to tell y'all that.
I can barely spell my name. I'm not. I can speak it.
Same root word in Mark. Good teacher. No one is good except God. Just a different grammatical forms. The root is identical, not the word, the structure. The man calls Jesus good teacher. Jesus replies, why do you good? This creates tension around Jesus' identity. The man says, what good thing must I do? Jesus replies, what do you ask me? What is good? Matthew removes the direct good teacher address. Same Greek word, different narrative framing. Objective observation, since the vocabulary is identical, the difference is editorial, not linguistic. That strengthens the case. Matthew could be consciously reshaping Mark's wording. He keeps the theology, God alone is good, but avoids potentially awkward, why do you call me good line.
Right. And I agree with all that, but my point was the Greek way of looking at things.
And that could, yeah, I'm with that. That could be that, for sure.
I mean, and I don't know, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
They didn't invite me to that meeting.
It is interesting, though, like, in that point. So, like, when someone says, like, I know I hear it all the time, like, the Bible is clear, or just look at what Jesus said. And, like, it's some of these stories, it's like, okay, I can look at what Jesus says, but it's like I got to choose A or B. Like, what happened? Because not only did Jesus change his quote, but the guy changed his quote. So, like, and this is, I think, I don't think the Bible is a narrative. I think dudes wrote it, and I think that they were, and that it could still be beneficial, and it could still lead you to God. But I think in one of those moments, like where a real strict definition of inerrancy,
right?
I think in that moment you go, what was said there?
I think it's the inspired word of God,
right?
But yeah, I mean, even throughout the time, there's some these added here and some ands added there, and some so.
Yeah, but like in that story, like what happened there though?
Right.
Like it's like two things happening. Well, that's like I don't want to get.
And that's all.
It's like the questioning side of my brain goes.
Well, and I think that's right. But and that's always my point is, if we're walking down the road and we see somebody get robbed, and then the cops are like, "What happened?" And I'll be like, "Dude came up, robbed that guy," and then we called you, and then you're gonna be like, "No," snuck up from behind him. Smoked him in the back of the head with a rubber mallet. I don't know why I used rubber, but it was crazy. And then that dude fell down and his nose was busted too. Yeah. And then our other boy, he's like, no. Came up in a blue Ford, jumped out with the hammer, hit him rolled him in the ditch. It was hilarious. And then another guy's like, yeah, but he stole $100 from him.
Yeah.
Well, these are all the same story, but it's all different vantages of.
Right.
We just told you the exact same thing, but nobody said the exact same.
Yeah, because I mean, the moral of the story still stays the same. The guy didn't give up the stuff; he still left sad.
Yeah, this guy got hit in the head with a hammer and he lost $100. Right? Everybody told the same story.
Yeah,
but it's just put a little different.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I definitely think it's interesting, but it's fun. It's like when these deals called synopsis, where we put them together. Synopsis.
I don't know.
Difficult.
I don't know the plural on that.
Difficult word to say.
Yeah, synopsis.
But. What I guess my point is, and what I really like to do when I'm making my episodes is like the fun of like comparing them. I think that's really fun to me because like I said, we get a different feel for how Mark feels like it's rougher, feels like he might just say something. You know what I mean? And then Matthew might be a little bit more meticulous.
And
Matthew is like, hey, I get what you're saying, but this is how it went. And then Luke comes through and he's like historical and geography and stuff like that, And sometimes they line up, sometimes they don't. And I think like with my show, I'm here to show When stuff lines, like I'm not opposed to showing you when stuff lines up. I've shown you several times.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, look how close that is, and then you think about why or why not, or it's not like I'm hiding that there's good things or points that there. Like, look how many of these places line up.
I don't think you're coming at this from you're not trying to beat this up. You're not trying to beat it down. You're just genuinely saying, hey, here's this.
Right.
Here's this. Why is this different? What does this mean? I guess what I was trying to say is I don't think you're coming at this with malintent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so ask your questions. I'm excited about your new show.
Yeah.
I mean, I watch your stuff, and
I appreciate it. Yeah.
And I think I just don't see a problem with it. And I know there are people out there that do. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah. I took a course online. I've been taking some online courses. It's like Biblical Studies Academy. It's not like a legit like college class, but I pay monthly for it, and I take courses, and they're like some of these are like university level courses.
Right.
I took a 32-week course, which you don't have to go week by week, but they came out weekly.
Yeah.
But I took it on the Synoptic Gospels, and it's just a guy. Shout out to Mark Goodacre, one of the coolest professors there is in the world. And he actually is a believer, but he's, I think he calls balls and strikes well. And, that's the good thing about this course I'm taking. It has everything from atheist professors to full-on believers in it. And, everybody's presenting, you know what you're getting into when you start a course. And so this course was by a believer, and he just set out, and it's just like, this is in Mark, and it's in Matthew, and it's in Luke. Why? What is what can we learn? And he would put them on the screen, and he highlights different colors for different things. If this thing is a double tradition, which is if something is in Mark, if something is in Matthew and Luke, but not in Mark, that's called a double tradition. Right. And that means they must have got it from a separate source. Where did they get that? If
why is it different?
Luke and Matthew agreeing separately without Mark, like there's an argument. Is there something called Q? There's this document called Q, it's like a hypothetical document, like a source that they don't have now, but it could answer some questions. And so there's people that don't think there's Q, and there's people that do think there's Q.
No, I've heard about that.
Yeah. And so you only get those by making synopses.
Which gives rise to the current Q.
Yeah. It's interesting. You can't find these things unless you do like what that guy did.
Right.
And like basically I kind of just learned the art of comparing.
Yeah.
And so, and the Gospels are super cool because most of the stories are flip-flopped in.
And I think the Bible, from my point of view, holds up very well to questioning. I mean, it does. I want to applaud you because, look, I've seen some of the comments on some of your stuff where some of your people aren't happy that this happened. I think the overarching theme is some of them are. Yeah. But, you've really taken a step out here and said, hey, this is what I want to do. It's my show, so this is where I'm going. Right. And man, I applaud that. Because I
think in a way I've hurt my reputation. I really do. I really believe that in my soul. We're in the Bible Belt, man. I think I in a way, there's people that are upset with me for this.
I've seen that, and I would encourage anybody to go listen to it. And it's okay to question these things. It's okay to ask.
It's not like I'm not reading the Bible. It's like
from a genuine want to know. Yeah. And I pray for you all the time, and I pray about your show, and I pray that God leads you where He wants you to go, and truly, that's what I think is happening. So that's why I'm always like, let it rain, baby. Make it happen. It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
All right, so give us one more time. When's the show coming out?
All right, March 3rd, which is tomorrow. If this comes out today, March 3rd.
Today,
awesome. Yeah. So, and I'll be releasing episodes every Tuesday. I will never miss a Tuesday. I put my stamp on that. I will never miss a Tuesday. Now, those episodes, every Tuesday will be a verse-by-verse breakdown. We're working through the book of Mark. On Thursdays, optional episodes I'm going to try to do as much as possible, and I've already shot a couple of these. They're cool. Or where we zoom out and we work on things that help build your knowledge and able that are going to help you, that are not necessarily stuff that we've brought exactly from these verses we've read so far, but things you need to understand. An episode on the temple, an episode on definitions. I think this episode is going to help a lot of people if they're really locked in. If you've ever sat around and listened to people talk about, really get more complicated talking about the Bible. Especially when I started, there would be guys, and they would say, these guys and girls that would say things, and if I didn't know a word, I'd be a little too prideful, and I'd just be like, oh yeah, I kind of understand what that means.
And let me tell you, when you're in the Bible, you just gotta be like, hold up.
Yeah. So
I don't know what that's. I don't know.
I got a whole definition episode, and I think I'm going to do one episode every couple months on just definitions, so you can understand. You hear the word theology, and I just assume you understand.
Well, just like we did at the beginning with agnostic. Okay, let's make sure
exactly,
because everybody thinks they know what that means, but then there's let's know exactly, because if we're going to talk about number one, the most sold book in the history of the world,
right?
Number two, an accurate history of the world from my standpoint. And number three, the biggest are what I believe is our God telling us how to live and what to do to get to heaven. Let's be accurate about it. And so that's why you need these definitions.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, episodes about definitions, settings. There's episodes about just the setting. Is it important that Jesus, like think about the travel. Jesus went from Galilee to John the Baptist in the wilderness of Judea. Like, he didn't walk in his backyard. He just traveled, 70 to 80 miles to go to the wilderness to get dunked by this guy. Right, yeah. I mean, they traveled a lot. They definitely traveled a lot. So things like that. The political climate. I can tell you about Pilate. I can tell you about Herod. I can tell you about all Herod's sons. Right. All those things. So episodes along the way on Thursdays they'll drop that'll give you more information that make the stories make sense more. And I'm just building up like a base because like in school, like if you don't know what 2 + 2 is, it's hard to jump into algebra, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like I feel like it's my job for people that are interested to come learn what 2 + 2 is. And for some of that, I think the backbone of a lot of even the spiritual stories have an even deeper meaning if you know what regular old 2 + 2 means.
I mean, that's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. Well, I'm with you, dude. I appreciate you being on here. Everybody, thanks for listening. Go check out Joe's show as it comes out.
Did we read the Bible more than any other episode?
I think so, probably so. Now, the one I put out yesterday was pretty hard hitting with Carmen, but we didn't read the Bible. We just went through testimonies on that.
Right. Just powerful. Experience is powerful.
You can't take away people's testimony.
Exactly.
It either is or it ain't.
Yeah.
Anyway, go check out Joe. What's your channel name?
I just changed the channel name. So it was Joe Teel Podcast. I'm just leaning into it. If you want to find it on YouTube, it's Joe Teel, Joe Teel Agnostic Bible Study on YouTube. And it'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you don't want to wait, you can go to Patreon. And it's Joe Teel Agnostic Bible Study on Patreon. And it's free. It's just early access. So you can just come hang out with me on the side.
Cool. All right, Joe, I appreciate you. Everyone, I appreciate you. I hope God blesses each and every one of you. And I'm sure we'll get back together and do this again another time at some point. All right, everybody. Have a good day.